It's time for the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. Stay tuned as we discuss what's happening in the world of local and national sports in Southeast Missouri and beyond. And welcome back to the special edition of the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And I'm Tim Hager, filling in for Kyle Roberts.
And we have a very special show today. We are remembering Three Rivers College men's basketball coach Gene Bess, who we lost a week ago today. We talked a little bit about Coach Bess's passing last week. Brian Rosner was gracious enough to sit in with us for a few minutes last week. But we've got a lot of memories today. We're going to be joined in a little bit by several people who, with their memories of Coach, current Three Rivers men's coach Robert Kirby is going to be on with us. So our trio of former players, Matt Gibson, Rudy, Harrell, good friend of mine, and Jerrick Kellum, who was one of my old classmates from back in the 1990s. And we're going to have a lot to say, and I know that me and Mark and Tim are going to have a lot to say. I'll just lead off. You know, I've written 2 feature stories and a column remembering Coach this week. And to a lot of people, you know, Coach Bess was, Coach, a living legend. To me, he was a friend and a mentor. In my column this week, I talked about, the friendship we forged over the years, how he had an indirect hand in me getting into sports writing because I took his basketball coaching techniques class. Just a heads up, I took about every class Coach taught. I took health/lifetime wellness. I also took his history and principles physical education class. That was a really good class too. A lot of people think of, classes like history and principles of phys ed and basketball coaching as just being easy jock classes. And I can tell you that when I took basketball coaching techniques, I had to earn the B I got in that class. I did not just, I had to work for it. But I remember other things. I remember, when I had, and I may have mentioned this before, I had a really nasty car accident back in 2008, and I ended up at, what used to be Lucy Lee Hospital here in town in the ER because I ended up with a MRSA infection, and they were needing to do blood work. And between nerves and bad veins, they had tried 4 times to, stick me and draw blood, and they couldn't do it. I was starting to feel like a pincushion, and it ended up that Coach Bess, drove, from his house to the hospital to steady my nerves so they could finally get that blood work done. That, I think, tells a lot about the friendship we had. He's somebody that I thought the absolute world of. Him and Brian, his son, were gracious enough to take me with them, to watch the national tournament out at Hutch back in 2002. Gave me my first taste of that tournament. He was just such an awesome person. I think he may have been even more awesome off the court than on, and it's an honor that we're getting to do this show to remember him today. And Mark, I know you've got some thoughts you want to share with us as well.
Yeah, the first thing I want to start off with is a personal message from the Three Rivers College president, Dr. Wesley Payne. I emailed him last week right after we got the news to get his thoughts, and so I'm going to read this word for word what he sent me. Everyone knows what an incredible coach Gene Bess was. After all, he was one of the elite few inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Coach Gene Bess was both a legend and an icon, the likes of which will never be replicated. He was also a truly remarkable human being who cared deeply about his players, this college, his family, and his faith. I was privileged to call Gene my friend. His impact extends far beyond the basketball court. He leaves a lasting legacy at Three Rivers College throughout our community and in the lives of the countless former players across the country whom he mentored, inspired, and guided during their years as Raiders and beyond. Coach will be truly missed and will live forever in our hearts and through the men he shaped into what they are today. And again, that was a statement from Three Rivers College president Dr. Wesley Payne. Just some stuff, and this also comes if you want to read the full release that the college put on the website. Go to trcc.edu and then under the About tab on the homepage, click on News, and this is the top story. And just some amazing statistics here. Its overall record, 1,300 wins, 416 losses. I don't know what that win percentage is, but Mike, you could do the math in your head.
I'll just use a calculator for now.
While you're doing that, 50 seasons. 50. I'm not misspeaking. 50 seasons coaching the Raiders. 2 national championships. That's a .757 winning percentage. So he's winning 3 out of every 4 games that he coaches. Some other statistics. Raiders during his tenure won 23 region championships, 20 or more games in 42 seasons, 30 or more wins 16 times, and 17 appearances in the national tournament. They were in the championship game 4 times, and in the semifinal 4 more times. So you take our 2 national championships, that means we've got 2 second places, and then 4 more times where we either finished 3rd or 4th. And it is just, it is an unparalleled history of success and winning, again, the likes of which we're never going to see. There will never be, at the Division I level, at the high school level, at the junior college level, there will never be another one who will put together just the consistent record of excellence. And as I am a Three Rivers employee, I started working for the college in the fall of '99, and I can tell you his toughness as a classroom teacher was no joke. Once I moved over to the faculty in 2004, basketball players were required to come to class and do their homework, and I knew that if someone was showing up late or not turning in their assignments, I would just send an email to Coach Bess. And the next time class was held, those players would be coming in. They looked a little bit more tired than they did before because he would just run them to death to make sure. But, he expected his students to perform as well in the classroom as they did out on the court. And I always respected that because, there's a lot of schools, where it's very well known, including Mizzou, where I went to college, that there's a different academic standard for the top athletes as opposed to the rest of them. So, I really respected that about him, that, the standard of excellence was something that he was always going to require.
Indeed. Tim, I know you've got a few thoughts as well, and I'll let you go from there.
I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me sit in today.
Glad to have you on,
I'm
man.
a fan of the podcast. You guys do a great job with national sports, but you really got your finger on local sports. And, again, it's an honor to be here. Talking about Coach Bess, I, too, took history and principles of PE. I, too, took basketball coaching techniques, and you did have to work in those classes, and I learned a lot in those classes. You guys touched on Coach Bess as a faculty member. He taught health class for probably 40-plus years. A lot is made of he coached 500 athletes that played basketball, but he probably had thousands and thousands of students who took his class, and a lot of people in this region have that connection with him because he was they called him Coach Bess, but he was still their teacher as well. So, yeah, I'm glad you guys kind of brought that point out. If there's a dated pop culture reference of who Coach Bess is to us would be John Wooden from UCLA from back in the 60s.
Yes.
Academic standards, disciplined, ethical, religious person. And I've thought a lot about John Wooden the last couple of days when I haven't thought about John Wooden in a while. But so that's kind of the comparison to Coach Bess. And then briefly, we three are from the Butler County area. I've lived half my life in Carter County, but news was presented to us very differently, pre-phones and things like that. I was thinking about the legacy of Coach Bess as a recognizable figure, the face of Three Rivers College, if there was a public face for that. And I thought of the 3 most recognizable people of my lifetime in this area. One, I thought it was Don McNeely. If you watch Channel 12, I lived in Harville, Missouri. We were lucky to get 3 channels, so we watched Don every day, and especially when he moved into weather later in life. Actually knew his daughter at SEMO back in the day when I was a college student. But Don McNeely, everybody, that was a household name. Congressman Bill Emerson was also a household name. I think he did 10 terms as our congressman back in a more of a bipartisan era. And he was kind of a big deal, recognizable face. They named the bridge after him there in Cape. But I think the other recognizable figure would be Coach Gene Bess. I think that's generational from – and I graduated Three Rivers in 1985, and he was a well-established icon then, and that legend only continued to grow, and grow. So just a rhetorical, throw it out to the listeners. Think about, during your lifetime, if you're from this area, household names, and you don't really get that kind of household name anymore because of the news is on 50 different ways to get it and cell phones and things like that. So what a legacy, what a moral, ethical person. And again, I got a chance to ride on the bus for 5 years as the radio broadcaster before we switched over to YouTube, and getting to kind of peek behind the curtain of Gene Bess. And he's everything you thought he was. He's everything you described, a person of character. On the bus, we talked as much church stuff, probably more church stuff with Brian Bess and Gene Bess than I ever did basketball. I kind of saved the basketball for the broadcast to try to keep it kind of spontaneous. But they treated me with a lot of respect. They were fun folks to travel with, and I sure appreciate the legacy of Gene Bess.
That legacy spans almost the entire life of Three Rivers College, because he started in the late 60s when the campus was in downtown Poplar Bluff and a lot of really old buildings, and then they moved to the current campus location, and he coached in the Best Student Center, and I was still working as a graphic designer for the college when we first redid that floor. I was the graphic designer at the college in 2006 when we celebrated our 40th anniversary, and I published pictures of Gene coaching like in, I think it was the 70-71 season, and he still had all of his hair and it was dark.
Oh, wow.
1979, the first year that we won the national championship, I grew up here in Poplar Bluff on Highland Drive, directly across from Poplar Bluff High School. It's the Poplar Bluff Middle School now, but it was the high school for years and years. And that was where the Raiders would play their home games, because there was no college gym. So they would play at what's now known as the E.T. Peters Gym. And so I would just walk up the sidewalk to those games wearing my bright yellow nylon Three Rivers windbreaker, which so many of us had that season. And I remember being in my bedroom and listening to that championship game in 79, and we were down by a lot at halftime. It just, it seemed like, we're not going to win it this year. And then just listening as they came back in the second half and then won that game. It's one of, growing up a Minnesota Vikings fan, I didn't have a whole lot to cheer for in terms of sports. And the Cardinals World Series win was still a few years away in 1982. So probably my best childhood experience with a team that I followed religiously actually getting to the top and winning the championship. And one more little bit of trivia that came through in the news of his death. When I was in high school, I dated a young woman who lived in Malden, and her last name was Bess, and her mother's name was Jean, Jean. And living in southeast Missouri, whenever she heard the name Gene Bess, they were almost never talking about her mother. And she shared that online. So shout out to Laura Bess for sharing that little bit with us. And that's Coach's legacy. Is practically everyone who's lived in southeast Missouri has a story that is related to him in one way or the other.
Can I segue there a little bit? You walked up the sidewalk to Poplar Bluff High School to watch a home game for Three Rivers. They were the 1979 champions. we didn't have a gym. Coach Bess coached at Three Rivers 10, 11 years without a gym. That's like a movie. You could almost make a movie out of
Yeah.
That's like the next Hoosiers movie or something, a Champions Without a Gym. I also went to a Raider home game at Neelyville High School because they would
wow.
find open gyms sometimes if Poplar Bluff had a game. So sometimes they would have a home game in the Boot Heel, or they'd have a home game somewhere else. And just finding practice facilities had to be a chore to be able to get in different gyms, and they're still competing at that top level. I graduated Three Rivers in 1985. I think we were the second or third class to graduate the Best Activity Center.
Mm-hmm.
So that gym would have been 80, 81, something like that when they finally had a home, 82. So that's just mind-boggling, amazing, the level of success, and not to have a gym. And you see the gym that we have now. You know, we went from no gym to the gym. But that's just an amazing kind of spin on things to be able to be a champion. And we, too, when they made it to the national tournament, they had a couple of day games, and we got to listen to them at school. And I was junior high. We were in study hall. Coach Adams, was our study hall teacher that hour, and he brought a radio, and we got to listen in class. That's cool stuff.
Yeah,
and
it
Mark
really is.
Mark Paris was the announcer, and he's been a broadcasting hero of mine. He was smooth. He was kind of ESPN before ESPN. Mark went on from Poplar Bluff Radio to be a sports anchor in Springfield TV. And but he was smooth, and he was a part of that. And we would listen, and all my friends, wanted to be Robert Kirby, and they wanted to be, the player that Sam Weaver. I wanted to be Mark Paris. Just listening to the ball games, you had that kind of connection with the broadcast, and you had that kind of connection with Gene Bess as well.
Oh, I can also tell you this for certain. This is such a clear memory of mine. There was no air conditioning at the Poplar Bluff gym. Yeah. And when they got into toward the end of the season, of course, it's January and February, so it's like 20 degrees outside. It was about 90 degrees inside that gym. It was so hot. And it's all surrounded by glass on three sides, and that glass would just be completely soaked with condensation from just the heat and everybody's breath in the building. That is such a clear image to me.
And big crowds too.
Oh, huge crowds! I mean, standing room only. If you got there late, you were standing on the balcony to watch the games, and even though it was uncomfortable, nobody got up and left. You were going to be there the whole time. It was such a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember it well.
A lot of good memories of Coach and of Raider basketball back in the day. And we're going to have some more coming up. When we come back, we will be joined by Robert Kirby and then by Matt Gibson, Rudy Harrell, and Jerrick Kellum before we come back and wrap it up after that here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Three Rivers men's basketball coach Robert Kirby, and you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome back to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller, and we continue our remembrance of former Three Rivers men's college basketball coach Gene Bess, as we are now joined by current coach Robert Kirby, who played on the first championship team back in 1979. Coach, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Mike. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Coach, Gene Bess has had such an impact on so many lives. I know he's had an impact on your life, your career, and I will let you tell me about that.
Coach Bess impacted a lot of lives. Him just being who he was as a human being. He was a great coach, but he was twice that good of a human being from the standpoint of how he treated us and handled us like a father, teaching us, and consistently building on all of the foundation that our parents had laid inside each and every player that come in and play for him. We already had a foundation walking in the door, but he did an outstanding job of really building the home on top of the foundation that was laid. At that age, you come in at 16, 17 years old, and you for the first time you're away from your parents, and you feel like you're grown. And he had a way of making sure you understood that you still got a lot of growing to do. And he did a magnificent job of growing each player that came in here and played for him and stayed 2 years, or some of them that transferred in for 1 year. He impacted, I mean, so many lives with who he was as a person.
Yes, he did. And coach, you've got, you've had a coaching career of more than 40 years. You were at several, universities before you came back home to Three Rivers. How did he impact your coaching career?
Well, the first thing first is, man, it was about discipline, um, being on time, being punctual, being working extremely hard. He didn't settle for anything less than your best, and he pushed that and drug it out of you when you didn't want to give it. Sometimes you fought it when you first walked in the door, but you finally figured out what he really wanted, and after that, it was ingrained into you uh, as you passed and went on to that next level. You don't always understand the life lessons that he had given you. He taught us a lot about basketball, but he really taught us a lot about life and what we were headed toward and how to prepare for it and how to be able to be productive in it. Um, just the life lessons that he gave along the way were just astounding.
Indeed. Being back here this last 2 years, you got to interact with Coach quite a bit. What was it like to reconnect with your mentor?
But I mean, it was really, I mean, a great feeling to be back here, um, to enjoy the time that I had with him. Um, you know, but I never really left because I mean, we've always stayed in contact. I would call him quite often about different things, or he would call me about players and wanted me to help him recruit and the different stuff, just different things we talked about. When I gave my sister a kidney, and we had a foundation there in Memphis, and I was shocked that he and his wife showed up. I had no idea that they were coming, and they were there for me, and um, just the and I'm not the only person he's been there for. He's been there for all of his players that have come through, and just the things that he did along the way to let you know he wasn't, I mean, really great at verbalizing, you know, how much he cared for you. He showed you what the little things that you did that he did along the way, and that you figured out along the way how he shaped your life.
I can vouch for that as well. I wrote a column a few days back, and I was talking about that. Back in 2008, I had a really nasty car wreck. I'd actually went down to Memphis to do some shopping and stuff, and I was driving back, like I think in Crittenden County, Arkansas, and had a pretty nasty car wreck. And a few weeks after the wreck, I had to go back to the ER because I had gotten an infection, and they were trying to draw blood, and they stuck me 4 times, couldn't get blood. It was beginning to get very frustrating, starting to get very anxious. And,
Mhm.
of course, this was in town, but still, Coach, drove over to, what was back then the old Lucy Lee Hospital, on the north end, and steadied my nerves enough that on the fifth try, they were actually able to draw blood. And I think that rolled, what may seem like a small thing just
Right.
kind of shows how much he
Yeah.
cared and how much he would come through in the clutch when you needed him.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And each and every player that's played for him can give you one of those times that he was there for. You know, um, he's just a special human being when it comes to that. And uh, you know, he came over every morning. If we could all be so blessed as to be at 91 years old, still drive yourself over to the gym to get out of your vehicle and come in and work out every morning
I
and then
remember
drive
that.
yourself back.
I
Um, the one thing I do know right now, he's running up in heaven. He's, you know, is he's running. He's back running again. You know,
Coach loved to run. I remember that was one of his hallmarks. He ran every morning, and he had a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast every morning.
yes, indeed.
That's another thing
Yes,
I
indeed.
remember. Another thing I remember about, we all know about Coach is he was very much a man of faith. You know, I'll let you give me a couple thoughts about that.
The one thing about him, especially after your freshman year, you come in and you're practicing, and your practices are long and brutal, and they're they're never ending. Especially if he feels like he's not getting what he really wants out of it. And, uh, but on those Wednesdays, you knew Wednesday that. I mean, no matter how bad you practice, we was going to get out of practice early because he's going to be at church on Wednesday night on
That's
time.
right.
And every Sunday, he was, dragging us to church when we didn't want to go sometime, and a lot of times we did, but we went to church with him, and he was a man of faith, a devout man of faith, and we often talked about a lot of different things that you know transpired in his life, and he always gave God the glory, and that was one thing that was always steadfast. One of the things that was always steadfast in his life. He was a devout Christian. That's why I said he's running up there. He's running right now because that's who he was as a person.
He was one of the best. And that is Robert Kirby, head coach of Three Rivers College men's basketball, here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Tony Webb, and you're listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome back to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. As we remember Coach Bess, we are now joined by another former Raider, Matt Gibson. Matt played for the Raiders in the early 2000s. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. Glad to have you with us. We
Yeah, glad to
talked
be here.
we talked a little bit last week, about Coach's passing. How much of an impact he had on you, how much he meant to you, and I'm gonna let you tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I had a short, I guess, a shorter career at Three Rivers. I was only there one year before I went to Hawaii, and actually it's funny because I talked to the guys even still on my team from that time. And we always joke that even though we were only together in each other's lives for, when you really look back on it, 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 months being together every day, and that's all it took, to impact lifelong relationships, lifelong memories, lifelong lessons. And our time with Coach Bess, obviously that's shaped all of us at that time in our lives when we were young men. Just learning to be independent, first time a lot of us away from home, going through the things that boys and young athletes and and things go through. And we crossed paths with Coach Bess, and we learned some things about ourselves that have carried us through until now, made us friends till now. And it's those things that, man, they'll just never go away.
Indeed, and I know you've talked a lot about his impact on your life. Tell me about that.
Well, I'll say when I was there with him, it's a totally different point of view than when you can look back and see it with a different set of eyes. Because when I went there, I was still learning a lot about how to be my own man, who I was, what kind of person I wanted to be in the future, what kind of reputation that I wanted to have. And it was hard. I went through some hard learning there. I think I was actually suspended for the first 12 games of the season for breaking team rules, and ran Bacon Park every morning for 2.5, probably 3 months. I woke up at 5:30 before weights, because we had weights at 6 with Consta. So I would have to go run Bacon Park every morning before weights, every day of the week, and then church on Sunday. And those were requirements as part of my suspension. And I paid, I paid the price I should have paid for breaking those rules. And after a while of, trying to prove to Coach that I really wanted to be here, and I wanted to buy in, and I wanted to be a part of the team, he let me back on the team. And actually I went on to have a really good season with a lot of support from Coach and from Coach Brian and Coach Dom. Even though there was this part of me still at that young age that was a little bit hard-headed, rebellious, still learning how to take accountability and learn a little bit of responsibility. So that was my initial experience. It was hard, and I was, not being able to play games, but having to do all the practices and do the extra running and make up for the mistakes that I had made already. So already I had, in the first 3 months, I had been really taught a lesson in accountability, that this was not going to be, the way that I thought it was going to be, no matter how good of a player I was. And looking back on that, it just was really, really important at that point in my life. The JUCO struggle, a lot of guys don't get to move forward from that. And I was lucky enough to get to. But I know that it was because of those first 3 months and the example that Coach Brian, Coach Bess, Coach Dom, that all those guys were a part of. And after that, my career, I got to play a long time. Let's say it like that. I got to play a long time. I got to have some success with basketball, and I would have just never been prepared for that whole ride. I would have never been prepared for that ride if it wouldn't have been for those first 3 months and the lessons that I learned, and then the months following that, where we got to actually be on the court, and I got to learn not just from his, what kind of man he was and what kind of example he wanted to set to us, but then I got to learn from his basketball mind. Then once I had shown that I was, willing to take accountability, willing to pay the price, willing to do, the time for my, my mistakes or the rules that I broke inside the team. And if I wouldn't have had his support after that, if I wouldn't have had the actual basketball part of his mind, his coaching, I still wouldn't have been able to move forward. So when I say that he impacted my life, I mean that he impacted the kind of man I was, and I'm sure that happened with a lot of guys too. But he impacted a lot of what my basketball was, how I played the game of basketball, how he taught me his way and his way to work and his way of system and his way of practice. That's what I carried with me in terms of my career. So, yeah, it wasn't just he changed my life as a man type thing, or he changed my life as a basketball player type thing. He actually changed mine all around in all those aspects. So I have nothing at all but love for Coach Bess, a deep love that came about from 6-8 months. And that is, I don't know, if that's not proof of the kind of guy he was, if that's not proof of the the excellence that he lived. 8 months. That's all it took.
Wow, that's powerful. And you know, another thing, you're a coach now, and how has he influenced how you coach? Tell me about that.
Oh man. I guess the easiest way to put it is he showed me, man. He didn't just tell you. He didn't just tell you how to be. He didn't just tell you. I'm telling you, and this is no lie, every morning that I went out there at 5:30 a.m. to run that park, there wasn't an assistant out there. There wasn't even any other players out there. But Coach Gene was there every day. He pulled up on time at 5:30, and he did my punishment with me. He didn't just, okay, some days he sit in the car. At that point, I think he was over 70, so, or 60, close to. But he would pull up every morning, and most of those mornings, he would get out there and run the park too. So the easiest way for me to say it is the kind of man he was. You could see it in everything he did. He didn't have to explain to you anything. You could look at him. You could watch him. You could hear the words that he spoke and the example that he lived by. And it just made you want to be like that. Just made you want to be like that.
Wow, wow, powerful words from former Raider Matt Gibson. And you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Three Rivers College women's basketball coach Alex Wiggs, and you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And we are back on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller, and we are now joined by my friend and former classmate and former Three Rivers College Raiders basketball player, Jerrick Kellum. Jerrick, welcome to the Sports Desk.
Hello, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you on, man. It's been a few years since we've got to talk somewhere besides social media.
Yes, it's been a good while.
Jerrick, you played 2 years for the Raiders. You know, I had a good run at Three Rivers. One of the things I remember about you is when you signed here back in 1996, you were one of the very first second generation Raiders because your dad also played for Coach Bess. And first of all, what was that like coming in, you know, having had a dad who played here?
Oh man, yes, I was. I guess I was elated and excited to actually play with a coach from Coach Bess since my dad had played there. Coming out of high school and from Illinois, but living and being raised in Alabama, hadn't heard much about Three Rivers besides my dad playing there and the stories he used to tell me about. Um, so coming there to play was definitely eye opener, and it was just a great experience. I mean, nothing I could have ever imagined before. It was my introduction to college basketball. So, like I said, my dad playing there, it was good. It was very good.
What what stood out the most to you about Coach Bess?
Um, coming in, I was, back then you're young and my dad playing there. I'm like, dang, Coach Bess has to be old. So, man, but coming in and just his livelihood on the court, he was still active with us in practice. I can remember our one-on-ones at 9:30. He was still active, and when we had to run Bacon Hill, he would be hiding in the trees and make sure nobody was walking. So just him being alert and being active with us, having a game plan, everything was still pretty was still his coaching skills were still there. Um, Not saying they wavered later on. I just after I left, I just don't know how everything changed. But I do know that when I was there, just his IQ, his basketball IQ was probably top notch. I don't think I played for another coach that had his IQ.
Cool deal. How did your 2 years at Three Rivers, how did it shape you going forward in the rest of your life?
Um, man, it shaped really on and off the court. Like I said, being from Alabama, man, I was probably 8 hours away from home, so having to get used to not being around, mom and dad. Even though I had family close, that was a change for me, challenge. But having structure, he set in a structure for us uh, that pretty much helped, really the foundation of the rest of, what I did. I can remember one time I was sick and in a game, and it was just not feeling well, and just the conversation that Coach Bess gave me, and it was just, it helped really balance how things would be for the rest of my life, and how you got to push through and make things happen.
Cool deal. Another thing that so many people have talked about with Coach Bess is his Christian faith. It was one of the central parts of his life. It really defined him. I think it's defined his legacy. What do you remember about that?
Um, I remember well. So of course, back then we just had the dorms, the male dorms on campus, and we had Rev. Rev was our dorm. What are you? He was the headmaster of the dorm, but he was very faith oriented also. And I remember going to church with Coach Bess. As a team, we would go to church. I don't think we did too many things where God wasn't the head. Uh, he lived that life. He showed us, told us about it. Um, and it wasn't a weird thing where he forced it up on us. It was one of those things where he just lived the life and he shared it with us. And some people grasped on, and some people didn't. But I don't think he he punished you for not. He just let his light shine, and it was just something that was on display on and off the court.
There you go. And that is Jerrick Kellum, former Three Rivers College men's basketball player, remembering Coach Bess here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Three Rivers men's basketball coach Robert Kirby, and you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome back to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller, and on this day when we remember Coach Bess, I'm excited to be joined by one of my favorite people in the world, my good friend Rudy Harrell, who played for the Raiders from 2010 to 2012, helped us get to Hutch his sophomore year. To me, he's always going to be known as the captain. He was one of the leaders of that group. Rudy, glad to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be here today, especially to honor the greatest, one of the greatest coaches and greatest men of all time. Thanks for having me, Mike.
It's an honor to have you on too, Rudy. And we were talking a few days ago about Coach. We were talking about, you were telling me how you owe him so much because he gave you a second chance to be a college athlete. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So I want to say it was 2009 before I started my first year there. I had been invited to a couple practices, I came out and I practiced with the guys, trying to try out, for the team. And I remember Coach Bess pulling me into his office, and he wanted to get to know me a little bit. And we began to talk, and one of the first things that came up was faith. And I remember telling him, I had just recently given my life over to Christ, and I was a born again Christian, and I told him about my past, and he didn't hear anything, but I was a born again Christian man, and I didn't know at the time that he was also a believer and a man of God. And once he heard that, man, he was like, okay, yeah, how can I help this young man? And I came over, maybe tried out a few times, and then I kind of stopped coming. Then months later, he reached back out and checked on me and the family and seeing how we were doing. And that's when he extended the offer to come and play for him, man. And it was awesome. It was amazing.
That was a memorable time. If I'm correct, you were a red shirt when we played for the national championship back in 2010. Was that right?
You are right. Yep. I was a red shirt, and I got to train with those guys and practice with those guys. That was a great team that I got to be a part of and try to help prepare them throughout the season. But yeah, that was my redshirt year when I came in.
What was it? How being with those guys? How did that make you hungry for the success for the success you guys ended up having when you were playing there?
Oh man, it was a great group of guys, man. Those guys worked hard, competitive. Um, Coach Coach Gene, man, he got a gift of just getting the best out of his players, man. And I remember those practices were tough, they were long, they were competitive. Put a lot of work in. Um, I just remember being a great group of guys who really, really was close, net, close group of guys, and took care of each other, man. It was. I seen that, and I hadn't experienced that before, and so I just tried to learn from that and try to keep it going for my sophomore year, man. It was an
There,
awesome experience.
there you go, and that's one of the things that stood out about the group that you guys were part of, that 2010 to 2012 group. I thought you guys had such a good bond. You fought through a lot of adversity, especially that, your sophomore year, 2011-12. I mean, a lot of people gave you guys up for dead more than once, but you came together at the right time, and and I feel like Coach Bess, being such a great motivator, you know, helped you guys get to that point where you just never gave up and you kept fighting till you ended up shocking the world and going to Hutch.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was always the goal, man. I can remember, Coach Gene, you know, setting that, goal for us and that challenge. Always encouraging us and saying, we had the talent. We just had to all buy in and, really just believe and work hard and believe in one another. And man, we put it together right there towards the end, and we were able to win our conference. And yeah, we got our bid in Hutch, man. It was a great, great experience. Super great experience.
Those are good times. You know, and like I said, I mean, and like you said, you know, Coach gave you a second chance, and I know that's something you're always thankful for. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so honestly, when he did give me a second chance and he got me there, I was grateful. I was definitely grateful. I'm even more grateful now, but I wanted to, basically show him that I appreciate it. And, I wasn't going to let him down. So, I gave him my all while I was there. Um, I remember I remember him telling us almost after every game we played on Saturday night, he would say, the most positive thing you can do tomorrow is get up and go to church. And, and I've always, that's always stuck in my mind. And so that's something I've always done, man. Um, just the life lessons, the wisdom he poured into us, not just on the court, but off the court. He's always encouraged us to be good people, to help people, to serve people, to be kind. Um, it was an impact on my life, man, that, I didn't really understand at the time. But, there's lessons I've learned from being at Three Rivers, those 2.5 years that I've been able to apply and almost everyday life situations. Just the way he taught us to protect the ball, take care of the ball. You know, I remember him saying, it's like gold. The ball is like gold. Don't let nobody take it from you. you know, and yeah, man. So he gave me a chance when, I played football at Arkansas State for about a year and a half, and kind of things kind of went downhill with that. So I was working in a factory, Alberto Cover, and I felt God telling me it's time to do something else. I didn't know what, I didn't know how. I remember calling my high school coach, Coach Brian Sure, and from Monticello High School back in Arkansas. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, coach, I'm thinking about playing some college basketball. Do you know any um, contacts, you can reach out and maybe get me a tryout?" And that's how, he reached out to Coach Gene Bess, and that's how it all started there. And so once I was able to get the tryout and get there and try out, I mean, the guys that I was playing against, that team, when I got there, they were pretty good. I think those guys were like really talented. I don't think I even really compared to those guys that were there at the time. So honestly, I think Coach Gene was, he looked at, not just basketball, but my life. I think he cared about me more than just basketball. And so he gave me a shot, even though I wasn't the best, and that's what I appreciate most. He gave me a chance to get back into college sports and other opportunities because of that. Other opportunities were presented when I was done at Three Rivers. I got to go to Cameron University and play my last year. And so because of him, got to Oklahoma at Cameron University, and then I ended up joining the military. So it was like, man, just his act of kindness and just believing and giving me a shot just opened up so many doors, man, for my life. And I'm so grateful for it.
Indeed. And if I'm correct, you are still serving in the military. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. I'm on my way to year 12 now. So it's been a journey. It's been pretty awesome. But just that mentality to serve, Coach Gene kind of helped bring that out of me, man. It's about serving others, loving others, and, getting in the game. So, yeah, it's been a great run.
Yes, it has. And that is my friend and former Raider Rudy Harrell here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Tony Webb, and you're listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And we are back on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. Glad to have, some good folks on, remembering Coach Bess, just in this last segment. We got a few things we want to say before we wrap it up. Tim, I know you were talking earlier that you got to go to the Naismith Hall of Fame induction 3 years ago. And I'll let you tell us about that real quick.
What an experience. I'm also on the board of trustees at Three Rivers, and 5 of the 6 board members got a chance to go along, made the flight to the Mohegan Sun in Hartford, Connecticut, flew into Hartford. For the Basketball Hall of Fame is a 2-day experience. The TV show is on Friday night where you get your jacket, and then the next night it's in Springfield, Massachusetts, and you get to go on stage and speak and things like that. Coach Bess went to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame with Dirk Nowitzki, Dwayne Wade, Greg Popovich, star-studded class, Tony Parker. And to watch him interact with those guys was just amazing. To be surrounded by basketball royalty, if you will, was amazing. We got to walk the red carpet into the Springfield, Massachusetts building for the event. I'm talking with a guy. When we get inside later, the guy comes on stage. It's Tony Kukoc, formerly of the Chicago Bulls. I had no clue because we've all changed in the last 25 years, but he was a very friendly guy. I got my picture made with Mark Gasol. Paul Gasol went in the Hall of Fame class as well. To watch the respect those Hall of Famers gave Gene Bess was awesome. You could tell it was a fraternity, if you will. Walking and looking over and seeing Mark Cuban and Dirk Nowitzki and Jason Kidd chit-chatting with Gene Bess.
Nice.
Pat Riley walks past him, goes straight to Coach Bess.
My gosh.
I mean, it's just
wow.
I'm sitting there thinking, why am I here? That's what's wrong with this picture. I'm standing here watching all this happen. It was just amazing. And even, again, just the respect shown to him during that experience was awesome for me as a sports guy. We're flying back. We're on a Southwest Airlines. We fly to Nashville. Half the plane gets off, half the plane gets back on. New flight crew comes in. Flight attendants talking to Coach Bess. We all move seats because you could do that then, Southwest. We're all sitting at the front of the plane. Everybody gets on. The flight attendant, a gentleman, gets on and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got a Hall of Famer on this flight today. 50 years, 1,300 wins, just inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Please welcome Coach Gene Bess. The plane went nuts.
Wow.
People clapping, cheering. And I'm sitting there 2 seats behind him thinking, I get to tag along for this. What a blessed person that I am. He was my teacher. When we talked about basketball on our broadcast, I always had a teacher-student relationship with him. But just to get to tag along for that whole Hall of Fame experience was just phenomenal. So I'm blessed, and I thank you, Coach Bess, for letting me tag along for the ride.
Yeah, something else about his legacy. I mean, less notable than the National Hall of Fame, but he was also an inductee into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. There, right outside of Springfield, and of course, sits on the wall as a part of the Three Rivers Sports Hall of Fame. So, but when you think about the coaching legacy that he leaves behind. When he did retire, his son Brian took over for him, and I thought that that decision was incredibly courageous. I believe I've talked about it on this show before, but it's often said in coaching, you don't want to be the guy who has to follow the guy. When Roy Williams retired of North Carolina, the coach who succeeded him didn't last very long. For Mizzou fans, when Norm Stewart finally retired, did Quinn take over right after Norm?
I believe he did.
Yeah, didn't last that long, and the circumstances under which he left. I mean, following in the footsteps of a legend, even if that legend is your father, is really, really difficult. And Brian handled that pressure and those expectations really well. And then after Brian retired, Robert Kirby comes in, and of course he's part of that legacy. He's part of the '79 national championship team. He's part of Coach Bess's coaching tree. When we talk about Three Rivers basketball, he knows exactly what that means. We've talked about it on the women's side. That it's moved over to the women's side where Alex Wiggs now is carrying on that same standard of excellence. It's always the expectation for Three Rivers basketball that we're going to compete for a national championship. Just having a winning record isn't enough. Winning your region is not enough. I mean, we're looking to hang banners, and Coach Gene Bess was the one who established that legacy for us. He set the standard, for championship excellence, and I just think that's terrific. I'm proud to be associated with Three Rivers College and to be part of that, that expectation of excellence that Coach helped establish.
You make a great point that I think a lot of people maybe don't get their arms around. Brian Bess carried that legacy well. Brian Bess was a protector of that legacy and a great ambassador for Three Rivers, getting to travel with them for 5 years, going to other gyms and watching every coach, every referee, every super fan go, hey, how's your dad?
Yeah.
How's your dad? Brian Bess always took time to go, hey, he's doing great, or he had this issue, or he's out visiting so-and-so. Brian always took time to share that with the public like that, and he didn't have to.
Right.
He could have just, I'm coaching, don't talk to me. But he carried the legacy with a lot of class. He was a great transition, if you will, from Gene Bess to Robert Kirby, and I don't think that probably gets said enough. And you're right, that legacy continues every day with Coach Kirby in the gym right now.
And Brian was probably the only coach in America who could have succeeded Gene and done it as successfely as he did.
I could not agree more.
Good points, and man, like I said, so many memories. There's only one Gene Bess. He'll never be replaced. Guys, any more thoughts before we wrap it up?
One last thing. Again, thank you for the opportunity to sit in today. Coach Bess went over 200 high school games. That's something else. That's a career plus for most coaches. That's 2 careers for most high school coaches. He won 200 games. We just kind of whatever. That's amazing. 12-year career, 200 wins, and then to pivot at the college and on 50 more years and 13 more 100 wins. I mean, it's just amazing. But 200-plus wins at the high school level, that is an awesome accomplishment. And again, thanks for the opportunity to sit in and be the substitute teacher today. This has been a blast, and you're talking about a topic that I'm glad you focused on today, and it's been wonderful to share these memories. Thank you.
Indeed. Mark, anything else?
Yeah, the last thing is just a call out to all Three Rivers fans in the area, because we've got a beautiful facility to play in, but unfortunately, oftentimes, these games aren't sold out, even when we get into the playoffs, when we're playing. So I just want to urge everybody, if it's been a while since you've been to a live basketball game, man, these games are so much fun. They're so exciting. And I know that in communities, because I cover high school basketball too, I go to the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, in a similar place to the Poplar Bluff High School gym, in that you can't breathe. It's so hot in there when the teams are playing in the wintertime. But, if you get some time in the upcoming season to come out and see a Raiders game, I would love to, to reestablish that packed out, sold out house, standing room only atmosphere for Raiders basketball. It's something that you can't replicate in any other situation. And in an era where big events, sporting events, I mean, I don't know how long it's been, Tim, since you've been to a Cardinals baseball game, but the last time I went, I dropped $200.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Easy.
Tickets and parking and food. Mm-hmm. And I think you can still get into a Raiders game for about, $5, $6?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot, and I mean, it is fun. You can bring your family. It's a great atmosphere. So, I think anyone who loved Gene Bess, who wants to honor his legacy, come out and see us.
And a lot of people watch the YouTube, and we'll do 1,600 views for a game. There's still interest there, but come out and see the gym. A lot of people know we have the new gym, even though it's 6-7 years old. Very fan-friendly facility. Say that 3 times fast. And bring your family. Come on out. I think if you come one time, I think you'll come back.
Yeah.
Because it is a great experience. We'll pick you up in a shuttle bus and drive you to the top of the hill.
Yeah,
and
there's more parking. If you went out there and said, "Well, I don't like to park," we built a new parking lot
parking
this year.
Is expanded and improved. But you make a great point. I honor that legacy. Come on out, see the statue, take a picture at the statue. It reminds me of the Stan Musial statue at Busch Stadium.
Meet me at Stan.
Yes, meet me at Gene. And come on out, and I amplify your point 100%. I think if you come out one time, you'll enjoy it and you'll come back.
Indeed, guys. And that's our show for this week. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And I'm Tim Hager, filling in for Kyle Roberts.
And you've been listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.